Welcome back everyone. In the last session we looked at overcoming procrastination. It's hard to say, I keep stuttering on that. And in this session we'll be looking at prioritising your time. So that is tip number 5 in this free time management course brought to you by Professional Futures Limited. So when I deliver this course in the classroom, one of the things that I love to do is to illustrate and demonstrate the pickle jar theory. I'm not sure if it's something that you know, but this is where we actually bring in an empty jar, okay, and I challenge a few of my students to try to place as much sand, pebbles and stones into that jar so that it's chock-a-block. And what we actually find is that they usually start with putting the sand at the bottom, then the pebbles, and then they can hardly fit the stones in the top of it. So the key with this is that if you put the stones in first, then the smaller items, so the pebbles, and then the sand all around it, then you'll actually fit more in that pickle jar than if you do it the first time round. So what is there to learn with that? Well, if you focus on the big important tasks, so in our pickle jar analogy, this would be the stones that we're looking to put into the jar, then this will leave you with plenty more time to do the less important activities, which in the analogy would be your pebbles and your sand, so that you can focus on other things that you may well enjoy doing. So in other words, do the big stuff first, and then you'll have plenty of time to do the lesser important stuff or the more enjoyable things. So how do you know what the big stuff is? So in other words, in our analogy, in the pickle jar analogy, what your stones are? Well, pretty simply, what you need to do is write down all the tasks that you need to complete, whether that's on a daily basis or a weekly basis. And to help sort of be able to swallow those stones or start moving on those stones, perhaps you might well break those stones or those larger tasks into smaller elements. So once you've done that, what you then need to do is figure out what parts of those tasks, what on your list, what is important and what is urgent, or are they both? Are they both important and are they both urgent? And from there, then you can then allocate your priorities. So you might use a scale from, for example, A to E, or you might use 1 to 6, but A being very important or very urgent, and E being unimportant or not so urgent at all. What you're doing now is actually prioritising your list. So essentially what you should be doing is focusing on the most important stuff, those that are classed as A, B or C, and ensuring that you achieve those tasks before you move on to the lesser important or urgent items. So in the last slide we talked about classifying our tasks into urgent or important categories, but we need to understand what each means. So we're going to look at what urgent means first of all. So urgent activities demand immediate attention. So in other words, they're time restricted and may well be for a senior member of staff. So for example, it might be for your manager, your boss. So it could be something that could feel quite uncomfortable, or a situation that needs to be resolved very, very quickly. Okay. So, an important task though is something that is important to ourselves, so they are linked to our own personal goals. And the key with our important tasks is that actually, whilst there might not be time specific, the importance of those tasks will increase within time. So in our introduction, I talked to you about the fact that you will have access to a couple of free tools. So this is the first tool that you will be able to download at the end of this course, which is a time management grid that you can use for prioritising your time. Now, I find this tool really effective. It's something that you can just literally draw out on your pad, or you can obviously indeed use the templates that we have provided for you. And how you would do this is when you're considering your urgency and the importance of tasks. So once you've categorised your tasks, you may well then identify that there's a number of tasks that are of high priority. So in other words, they're very urgent and very important. So urgent in terms of there's a time restriction, or they're for a manager, and very important because they also link into your own personal objectives. So those tasks, those that are put into the box that I've just highlighted in red, are classed as high priority. And those are the tasks that you would immediately focus your attention onto. But then you may also categorise some of your tasks as being urgent but not that important. So in other words, they're not sort of key to your own personal objectives, but they're still classed as urgent. So there's a time restriction on there, or they are for your manager, so they need dealing with very quickly. So in that categorisation, once I've done the high priority tasks, then I would move on and tick off the quick and simple tasks. And the next level that you would perhaps look at is items that are important to you, okay, but aren't that urgent. So I've just highlighted that in green. So those are tasks that are key to your own personal objectives being achieved, and actually the time frame isn't so tight, and it isn't for anybody else other than yourself. The last thing that you would look at is if you're categorising the tasks that you need to do on a daily or weekly basis as lacking in importance and lacking in urgency, that for me would be classed as waste. So what I would do, if I've allocated on my list a number of items that I see as being waste, I would look to see whether it's important that you do them. Do they need actually completing, or could somebody else actually do those tasks for you? So what can you do to ensure you prioritise your time effectively? Well, first things first, make a list and ensure that once you've written that list, you rewrite your list in priority order. Okay, so remember what we've already said. You need to consider what items on your list are classed as urgent and classed as important. And the key is to ensure that you complete a mix of urgent and important tasks each day. Now, once you've written your priority list, you must ensure that you take action immediately and finish them one by one. This will then help you to focus on your most important jobs first, for example, your urgent ones, and allow you plenty of time to plan for completing those important tasks that are key to your own personal objectives. So I hope you've enjoyed this little session on prioritising your time. In the next part, which is part 7, we'll be looking at how to make effective decisions. I look forward to talking to you then.